This move just revealed the United States' secret plan to freeze your savings and control your money. I know it sounds like a giant conspiracy theory, but this move by the United States government and a giant company that is very closely connected to the US government now is making all the sense in the world. And if we read between the lines between what Scott Bessent recently said, well, this will all make sense. But first, let's dive into this giant move made by Tether and Bo Hines. For those of you who have been under a rock or potentially sleeping at the wheel, the former White House Crypto Council Executive Director, Bo Hines, he stepped down just earlier or late last week. And now all of a sudden, he is directly intertwined with Tether, the largest stable coin in the world. And it's all with speculation because Scott Bessent last week had a, let's call it, famous mess up or potential slip up in the media where Scott Bessent said, hey, the United States is not planning to buy any more Bitcoin. So from my perspective, I thought, hey, Bo Hines, the young gun, he's going to look to get into the private sector because he sees all of these Bitcoin treasury companies come up. He sees 155,000 Bitcoin left on exchanges. He sees 2.25 million left on exchanges overall. The 155,000, excuse me, is on OTC desks. So he sees these things. He sees the treasury companies coming online. He needs to think, hey, I want to get a piece of that pie. But this move with Tether is somewhat unexpected. And I think it shows the bigger plan of what we have going on here because Tether's got a very unique history, and Tether is potentially one of the most profitable business models ever. And their connection with the US government now just got even more interesting, especially with what we just saw with the Genius Act. Now, I'll get into that here in a second, but let's review a little bit on Tether and Bo Hines and what this move means, at least initially, right? Because as the appointment of Hines signals a renewed focus on entering U.S. markets and more investments in, quote, domestic infrastructure. So they want to get in with the United States after they pass this Genius bill. And so appointed Hines to directly engage and coordinate the company's U.S. strategy and expansion as part of its core focus, and immediate effect. Hines previously served under President Trump's administration, where he worked on initiatives to foster digital asset innovation, set guardrails for stablecoin issuers, and develop collaboration between governments and the blockchain industry. Okay, but let's take a step back because who really is Tether? And, what does this all mean for all of this, right? Is it the potential of Tether teaming up with the US government? Because Tether's always been very cooperative with the US. They've even said, hey, you know what? We've never been shady. Whenever the United States government has any sort of question, we've done nothing wrong. They're the head of the most traded cryptocurrency in the world, backed by Trump and Trump's aide, Howard Lubnick. So you guys can see there's a lot of dots to connect here with all of this. And then there's been evidence of U.S. Treasury bill market share and lowering yields because Tether directly holds 98.5 billion in U.S. Treasuries, representing 1.615 billion in annual interest savings for the U.S. government, aligning with the theories of the liquidation, saturation, and nonlinear price impact. These results highlight stable court demand and can reduce sovereign funding costs. Now, this is all interesting because we also have the U.S. government just being really intertwined with the private sector of the Bitcoin and crypto space. But the uniqueness with Tether is that the U.S. has basically come out and just been all in on stablecoins. In fact, if you look at the highlights of the Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas earlier this year, you heard stablecoin, stablecoin, stablecoin. And then the Genius Act passed in order to give those quote unquote guardrails. Well, this should be something that we should have all expected, because we see Howard Lubnick potentially in ties with Tether, and this is from January 29 of this year. So his pick to run the Department of Commerce, see, so for those kids at home, commerce, you guys know, trading back and forth, buying and service, is probed by the senator on the Tether connection of his firm. So Elizabeth Warren, as much as I do not like her, but she's flagged this Tether relationship with Cantor Fitzgerald's Howard Lubnick as he faces the Senate's confirmation process to become Trump's Secretary of Commerce. Warren wrote a letter questioning his status as a U.S. Tether partner and investor. In his confirmation hearing, Lubnick suggested more intensive auditing and demands and the use of law enforcement AI tools to root out illegal activity. And everybody's been saying, oh, the biggest loser from this Genius Act. Oh, it's been Tether. Nobody wants to use Tether as their stablecoin. Well, I think this lines it all out. From this, the U.S. is now going to partner with Tether. Tether is going to be very intertwined. See, I don't know if you remember this, but not too long ago, when El Salvador was making Bitcoin legal tender, President Nayib Bukele wanted to have Strike and Jack Mallers be the official governmental wallet of El Salvador. Jack refused because Jack did not want to be fully intertwined with the government, because he wanted these things to be agnostic. He wanted Bitcoin to be the money of the people. Well, Tether and these big guys, they've been cooperating with the U.S. government and essentially doing everything that they say. So what does that mean? Does that mean that the United States government now is going to start to work with Tether to eliminate the banking system? Because what is Tether, right? Tether is a centralized stablecoin, right? Remember, Tether is centralized for all of this, right? So as a centralized issuer, it controls the issuance and management, unlike decentralized stablecoins that rely on smart contracts. Tether has a reserve control. So it has reserves backing USDT, and it has freezing or burning capabilities of all of this. So they could potentially use this as the United States to say, hey, you know what? We are going to partner with USDT, Tether, to potentially control all of your savings, your spending, and monitor all of this. This is a backdoor CBDC. And I think the centralization aspect of Tether should be very frightening for all of this. I mean, not too long ago, we saw Tether was going to potentially bring their stablecoin back to the US, or back to Bitcoin, and making it centralized. But this is saying something otherwise, right? The biggest loser potentially was Tether. But then, hey, we'll bring in the young gun. We'll bring in Bo Hines to correct our relationship with the United States government. And, you know, there was recent issues with the US as they had a civil action of approximately 2 million involved in Hamas fundraising. And Tether fully cooperated with this, right? So Tether has always cooperated with the United States government. Look, say what you want. It doesn't matter to me whether you're on one side or the other. To me, I think that money should be free and open, and you shouldn't have the ability to freeze somebody's bank account because you don't like what they do. And Tether getting intertwined with the US government, even surpassing Germany's 111 billion in US treasuries, And now bringing on Bo Hines with all of this, it makes for something that is very, very, let's call it just interesting, right? There's a lot of potential here for things to get in the weeds and get very hairy. Now, we saw something peak out with this at some point in time with Europe, and we're going to get into all of that here in a minute. But let's go over just some of Tether's intertwining with the US government here right now. So they've been fined for misleading reserve claims, but they've cooperated with law enforcement on illicit activities, thus freezing people's accounts and things like that. They're one of the largest private holders in US debt, affecting treasury yields. So the government needs to cooperate with them, because if they dump US treasury yields, well, that could potentially send some things crashing and burning. Then on top of it, we also have Bo Hines, which I just said, who has strong ties with Cantor Fitzgerald and Trump officials. And they directly impacted by the stablecoin laws by the Genius Act. Now, like I said, a lot of what we see here is some regulation that's been put onto Tether. And so them getting into the United States government having some sort of regulation around that, it makes sense, right? It makes for people to truly believe, hey, you know what? I think that we can find a way to, I guess, weasel our way into the United States government, right? I mean, the crypto influence, it's there, it's present. Everybody sees it now. The amount of money that's being poured in, right, is really shining through. And people have actually donated Bitcoin to the campaigns. I mean, I know good friend of the program, Gary Cardone, he's been on the podcast a couple times. He came and he donated, I believe, 12 Bitcoin to President Trump's campaign when Bitcoin was about 80,000, maybe 60 to 80,000. So, of course, that has appreciated and nearly doubled since the time Gary donated. So that's why I never recommend selling your Bitcoin. But at that time, the borrowing against your Bitcoin platforms weren't as popular or up and coming. So this is why I want to show people things like Salt. You can go to saltlending.com/green candle. It's down in the bio or in the show notes below, but you'll never have to sell your Bitcoin. So whatever you want to do with your money, you don't have to sell it, right? There's no credit checks, nothing like that. You could just get it immediately. And they even have a no liquidation solution of the Salt Shield if that's something that's worrying you. It'll help you sleep at night. But they got some of the best rates in the industry at 8.95%, 12-month terms, 70% LTV. And best of all, no rehypothecation. So you don't have to worry about any funny business with this, because we all know about the funny business that can happen with banks, right? Banks freeze your money. But the true power of Bitcoin is holding it yourself. And so I'm going to give you guys some Bitcoin here for coming into the Green Candle live chat. So make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button, telling a friend to tell a friend to come on in. And then let's go ahead and see what we got here. Remember, if you sign up at bitcoinwell.com/green candle or the link below, you'll get 500 Wishing Well points. You buy Bitcoin, you get 500 more. So you keep inviting these friends, folks. Well, we'll start to see it all come through. And boom, 477 sats straight to your dome piece. So make sure you guys are hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button so you guys know when I'm going live. Outside of that, if you missed that, you could go to bitcoinwell.com/green candle, sign up today. And then if you got 50K smackers, scroll on down and buy it, and buy the true freedom money, because what we're seeing is essentially the United States government and others line out a plan to potentially freeze and control your money, right? McLovin is saying BTC and cold storage is the way. All these guys, right? The government wants control. That's exactly it. What Dub is saying in the chat. To be accurate, it's not money, and if it was, it would still be a liability of the Fed, not ours. like BTC is. Amen to that, right? It's another control. So these guys, we see Dub, he doubled down on his DCA. We'll get into the Bitcoin price here in a minute, but doubling down when the price is dipping, and especially when you see headlines like this, I think is very smart, right? I mean, thousands lose access, over $100 million frozen. Oh, it's just because your bank had tech issues, right? But if you look at this, US banks are now sitting on 413 billion in unrealized losses. That was in the first quarter of this year. That's astronomical. And we've been sitting in unrealized losses for this entire time here since 2022. Unrealized losses basically for 3 years in a row. So banks didn't really crawl themselves out of it at all. And then we also see this, right? I had an earlier video about all of this at another point in time about the EU regulations that we see, right? So the EU has come out and said that they are perfectly okay with using the money in your savings account to invest in whatever the European Union sees fit. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when you see the United States government, you look at this US debt clock just ticking back and forth. How can you trust people? How can you trust the government to invest your money correctly when this is what we've got? We literally have, we're saving 600 billion in from the Doge clock that we started this year. Okay, great. That's saving $5,000 per taxpayer. That's not much. And we're sitting at 123% GDP to debt ratio. And then, yeah, I mean, like we've seen asset freezing globally. EU has been one of the leaders when it comes to asset freezing. Other financial assets of persons listed in EU legal acts, such as person may be associated in the Taliban. Yeah, so that's what they use, right? They use the fear tactics to do that. And they're saying they want to do it to protect the investor because you guys aren't doing it well on your own. Dub is saying he doesn't believe the debt on he doesn't believe the debt on the debt clock. So I'm curious why you believe that, why you don't believe that, and if there is, another more reliable source. I'd love to hear it from you, Dub. But regardless, I mean, we're seeing Bitcoin crashing and burning to 113K. I mean, what are we talking about here? This is crazy. 113, all in the news that the US, potentially could be, doing some hairy things with what we see going forward, right? I mean, so I think the US sitting at 113 and the slowness, let's call it, on the US strategic reserve and now the push for stablecoins, I think has people worried. So I think investors are really looking forward here. We've got a lot of macroeconomic factors here coming here in this next week. We've got the Fed in Jackson Hole where, everybody's speculating what Jerome Powell is going to be saying on Friday, whether he's going to be hawkish, dovish, what have you, some other pigeonish, some other bird metaphor, right? So the government is going to be looking at, hey, are we going to add and inject more liquidity in the market? And, there's some theories around here that the market's already priced in a couple rate cuts. So if Powell only says, hey, we're going to cut one time, well, I think people are going to be worried about that and the market's going to pull back. But there's other bullish news here in the news, guys. I mean, how could you not? When you see things like this, Brazil will hold its first hearing on a Bitcoin strategic reserve. When you see these big things going on, and you see the faultiness of some of these other asset classes. Like, for the first time in history, we have new homes being cheaper than existing homes. That's just showing how poor that they are being built right now, right? So I think you got to be bullish on one asset. What asset should you be bullish on? Well, hell, I think the obvious choice is Bitcoin here, because of what we've seen through the positives with all of this, right? So, with Bitcoin being as bullish as it is, I think we got to keep a close eye on Tether and these stable coins, right? Because Tether getting intertwined with the US government, it's going to muddy some of the waters, and these quote guardrails that were set collaborate the U.S. Bo's appointment demonstrates our commitment to building a strong U.S.-based sector. And from there, it'll expand to see new opportunities, including a deep focus on potential further investment in domestic infrastructure. But I mean, as McLovin was saying in the chat, Bitcoin and cold storage is the way, man. That's what wins. So that's why I got my Trezor. You go to trezor.io or the affiliate link below. You can use promo code Green Candle. I've got my Trezor Safe 5 here. I got the Bitcoin only edition, so you don't have to worry about anything else. It's got a slick orange back. You use promo code Green Candle, you get 5% off of this whole thing. And look at this thing. It is sleek, folks. So you guys should just do that. Go to trezor.io. And then you guys need to back it up. I mean, I keep mine very safe with a crypto steel. The thing I love about crypto steel is that it just comes in the mail. It has a sealer case here. It can stay up to 1 ton. It's one of the oldest Bitcoin Bitcoin seed phrase storage devices. And you could even use other things to store it. If you've got a master password, you got all these other things. You could go there and sign up with buy a crypto steel with promo code Green Candle. You do that, you'll get 10% off here, right? So these things, it's super cheap and easy in order to do that. We'll have Scott Bessent backpedaling and continuing to backpedal from all of these Bitcoin buys. And, Dub saying, if you track the debt clock, you'll see the numbers randomly change day from day, correcting or fixing numbers, if you will. Hey, I mean, I wouldn't doubt it if it's not super accurate, to say the least. I mean, All Nighter Hider saying, with developers acting as the bank to finance buyers, new home prices can come down with less ones. Mix, sorry for banksters. Hey, I mean, the whole industry for housing, that's going to be a little bit hairy. I actually did a video on my Macro Insights channel the other day about housing hitting a 30-year low. And I'm actually going to do a live stream directly after this in 5 minutes, because I'm going to be going over what I just showed you guys here, how new home prices are now cheaper than existing homes. So smoke the like Cheech and Chong, hit the subscribe button. And if you guys want to go and join me on another live stream, I'll be over on my Macro Insights channel in about 5 minutes. So I'll catch you guys over there.